Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in this tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. Big bird. Don't know what kind. Missed that. Anyways, so today is part 3 and the final part of getting your tiny house ready to move. What is that? I don't know if that is an eagle, just a really big raven. Anyways, so I've already done 2 parts to this series. Sorry this third part and final part has taken so long. I've been a little busy, as you guys know if you follow the channel. And if you don't, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, really helps the channel grow. And if you are subscribed, just check to make sure you're still subscribed, because I do get messages every once in a while that let me know that somehow longtime subscribers have been unsubscribed by YouTube. Not sure why that happens, but it is a thing. So anyways, today we're going to go over part 3 of getting the your tiny house, a tiny house, ready to move. So we've already gone over what to do ahead of time, all of the things you need to schedule, find, get arranged ahead of time. That was part 1. Part 2 was getting the inside of the tiny house ready to move, getting it all packed up, everything like that. And today is part 3, getting the actual structure, the outside, ready to move. I wish I had that on camera. That was a bald eagle that just flew from that treetop over the tiny house. That was incredible. It was so close. I think that's a very good omen. Okay, so getting the outside of a tiny house ready to move. This is all practical stuff. Fact is, you've already arranged your mover, or you're going to move it yourself if you're experienced and have the type of vehicle that, you know, can handle this kind of move. I didn't. I had my mover scheduled, A&N Transports, Andrew and Noemi. They were going to move me from Calgary to the Vancouver Island, and then they moved me again for my first spot to this location. So I knew I had that sorted out, but I had to get the house ready to move. When you're moving your tiny house, obviously there's outside things that need to be done. In my case, I always like to have well, for insurance purposes actually, I need to have the tires off the tiny house and the tiny house skirted in. So behind the skirting is some 2x4 framing that then the skirting is screwed into. First time I did it when I moved from Calgary, I numbered these, labeled them and all, and the fact is your new spot is not going to be exactly the same distance, height, elevation as your first spot. So I'm not sure that that was very useful. It was just more effort than it was worth. But this needs to be moved and it needs to be taken off. And what I needed to do was then also get the tires put on. When the mover came, the day of the move, all he needed to do was hook up, plug in, because the trailer has brakes built in, and obviously the lights, the brake lights and everything like that. So there's a plug-in. And he also checks the pressure and the lug nuts on the tires. That's part of what he does for, you know, insurance purposes and to make sure that the house is ready to go. But what I wanted to make sure of was that everything was ready. So the skirting had to come off, that framing needed to be disassembled. And then also underneath the gooseneck of the trailer, I have built a shed that was built so that it could be disassembled in those 5 panels, moved and then reassembled. So those ones needed to come off. But here's the thing, when you're moving a tiny house, you have other things that need to move other than the tiny house. And my builder was coming to move the house. There was no room on his truck to move the other things. the biggest of which was this front step. The old front step that I had in Calgary, I left behind at the mobile home park because we were moving such a long distance and I didn't have a way of getting it to the island that was cost effective. It just made sense to leave it behind and build a new one here. But I wasn't going to leave this behind when I moved spots here on the island. So there's no way I could move it myself because I couldn't fit it in the van, and I didn't want to have to rent a trailer for it because I had no way of getting it on the trailer. There was also all sorts of other things that needed to be moved, such as the framing and the skirting, the shed pieces, the blocking that the tiny house was on, things like that. So I found a company, a fellow who had a picker truck, a picker truck. So that's basically a flatbed with an arm on it that can pick things up and put it on the flatbed and then take them off. And so I hired him, and it was him and his assistant, and they came the day before the move to pick all of this up and deliver it here to the spot. So it was all sitting there across the meadow when the tiny house moved into this location. And you're going to need to think about that sort of stuff. And my recommendation, unless you have the equipment to do it yourself, my recommendation is to hire somebody. There's a million other things that you're thinking about when you're planning to move your tiny house. And I'm a big believer in working smarter, not harder, and hiring people to do the things that I can't do myself. When I was moving from Calgary to Vancouver Island, I was going to be pulling that U-Haul trailer, and in there went the skirting, the blocking, the panels for the shed, my bike, outdoor furniture, and all of that. But a front step wouldn't have fit. And I would have done the same thing here if it hadn't been for the front step. The front step was coming, so if they were coming with a flatbed to move the front step, they could move everything at once. And so for a couple $100, I just had them do it. Now there's a little, here, let me show you. There's the awning piece above the front door. And that piece needed to come off for the move, for both moves. I took that off and I packed that into the van for the move. So if you have outside lights on your front, by your front door, you want to take those off. If you have an overhang, you want to secure it. Either take it off or secure it down so it's safe for moving. Those are all things that you need to do. I would also say that the day of the move or the night before, you want to make sure that all of your utilities are disconnected. So the morning of the move, I went and disconnected the gray water hose and packed that up. I disconnected the fresh water intake. I made sure that the house was unplugged and the cord for the house electricity was secured, tucked away, that the internet cable was unplugged, all of those things. And really, you're going to need them the morning of, so I didn't disconnect my water and my electricity both times that I moved until the morning of, after we had made our breakfast and had our showers, all of those things. So if I had to give one piece of advice, my biggest piece of advice, it would be to hire somebody to be there to help. So a handy person. I had Steph in Calgary. I had Joe here on the island. You want somebody to be there just to make sure, to help you with getting everything disassembled and packed up. You want somebody to be at the new location to help you get reassembled and reset up. There's a lot of work that comes in getting the house ready to go. And it's not hard as in technical, but it's hard as in usually fairly heavy. Like the tires for this tiny house are big, and there's 6 of them. And right now they're slid under the trailer on pieces of plywood so that the skirting could go on. But all of this needs to come off. Those tires need to get put back on, and those lug nuts need to also be put back on. And those are all things that require some physical strength and equipment. And I think that having somebody there that you've paid to be there to help you with all of those tasks is a real peace of mind and worth every cent, in my opinion. Your mover will likely get the jacks down on your house so that they can disconnect their vehicle and leave, but then you need somebody to level the house, get it on its blocking, take the tires off if you're going to take the tires off, but at least get it on its blocks, because you shouldn't leave your house sitting on the tires. You can leave your tires on, but to have weight on your tires is going to be hard on those tires. They're sitting there, they're not moving. There's a lot of pressure just on one sort of edge of the tire, one surface of that tire. Even if you leave your tires on your tiny house, you should have it jacked up and blocked up so that there's no weight on those tires. It will make your tires last longer. Which brings me to a discussion about tires. So what most people don't think about is their tires. I certainly didn't, because I had never done this before when I moved my tiny house for the first time. I never thought about the tires. I didn't think about what they were rated for. I never really thought about the weight of the tiny house. And then, of course, all of the additional weight from my stuff being in it. None of that entered my mind. So what happened was we blew a tire at the end of the day of the first day of the move. And it was this back tire. There's this trailer is a triple axle trailer, which means that there's 3 axles, three tires on each side, 6 tires total. I made some notes to make sure that I get this right. I knew it was heavy. She's 37 feet long, 9.5 feet wide, right? It's not a small trailer. I didn't set out to build the smallest tiny house. But what I didn't realize was how big it was. So after we pulled out of Calgary on our move to the island, about 20 minutes in, there was a weigh scale that was not a manned weigh scale that truckers can pull into, RVs can pull into, and just weigh their vehicles. And so Andrew pulled in there to weigh the vehicle because it was pulling pretty hard. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but he could really feel the weight. And it turned out that the house was almost at 22,000 pounds. Yeah, 22,000 pounds. When he weighed the house and took a look at the tires, what that was that the tires were 80 psi rated tires, which meant that they could handle, how much was it? They could handle 18,000 pounds. So we were definitely overweight, which was what was causing it to be, a little bit more difficult. There was more drag when he was pulling it. And there was nothing else I could put into the van or into the U-Haul trailer. It was maxed full. And what Andrew said to me was that he could pull it, he would go extra slow and be extra careful, but he was concerned about perhaps one of the tires blowing out. And also, if we hit a weigh scale that was manned and that was pulling vehicles in, and he went through it, then that would be the end of the trip until we lightened the load, because they would not let him continue on. Luckily, that did not happen, but we did blow that tire. And so it was, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night-ish, after a very long day of travel, and we had to call an after-hour tire service, Cal Tire, and then I had to pay for a new tire plus the after-hour service, and it cost me a lot. I remember it being like $400 or $500. Luckily, I brought cash with me, which I would definitely recommend, and be prepared for something like that. And luckily, because there's 6 tires on here, when one blew, he was able to still limp into town, because we were only about half hour at Chilliwack, BC, to get to the Cal Tire to have it replaced. that wasn't the max rated tire that could have been on this trailer. And if the house was at 22,000 pounds and the tires that were on it were rated for 18,000 pounds, and given that the house came to me with all of the appliances in it, and obviously all of the materials, the only thing that I had added to it prior to getting it delivered to me was I had the bed frames delivered to them so they could assemble it in the bedroom. Then there was just my added stuff, obviously, your dishes, your pots, your clothes, your food, the mattress, the love seat, little things like that, the TV. But what I realized was it must have been at very near max weight rating capacity when I received it. And I don't have a lot of criticisms about my builder. I love my builder, and I think they did a fantastic job, and I've lived in my house for 5 years now and love it, and been exceptionally happy with the quality of the build. However, a professional builder should be able to estimate what the weight of the materials of the build are going to be. And we ordered the trailer, custom ordered the trailer for the layout of the house. And the trailer cost me $20,000, $22,000, just the trailer itself, because it's a gooseneck and it's a little wider. So obviously there was a bit of a drop of a ball there, because this is not my area of expertise. I would have thought that they could have estimated that they were, or foreseen that they were getting pretty close to max rating for the tires on here. And at the very least, put a higher rated tire. So here's the thing. There's no spare tire that came with this trailer. So we didn't have a spare. And most tiny houses don't come with a spare. Tiny house trailers don't come with a spare. So there's that. I could have bought a spare ahead of time and had that ready. Again, I never thought about that. And two, you can get a higher rated tire. I could have gotten a 110 PSI tire, which with 6 tires would have given me the capacity to max capacity of 22,700, which would have still been, because we were just under 22,000 when he weighed it, would have still been pretty close, but would have been sufficient. That was never a discussion that was had, and I never thought to have the discussion. So I'm telling you guys so that you guys can think about that when you're ordering your trailer, when you're having your house built. You can have this discussion with the builder about what they estimate the finished weight will be. And then you can think that your stuff is probably going to be a couple thousand pounds. It just is. Food, dishes, clothes, your TV, your other stuff. Like it just, and any kind of furniture you put in it ends up adding weight, more weight than you think. And so if I had known, I would have asked for higher rated tires. But I would have probably, if I was going to do it again, build another house of this size again, I would have put in dualies. So instead of 6 tires, 3 on each side, there would have been 12 tires, 6 on each side. You can't do that after. At least I don't think you can. And that would have given us a ton of weight capacity, no concerns at all. So that's what I would do if I was doing it again. Yes, it would have definitely added to the cost of the trailer and certainly the cost of the tires. Knowing what I know now, that's what I would have done. But on the move from my first spot here, which was about an hour and a half drive, what I ended up doing was my landlord here had a storage trailer that he allowed me to use, and in the weeks leading up to the move, I brought over all of my canned goods, all of my pots, all of my dishes, anything heavy that I could think of, I brought over. I brought over my air conditioner and my printer, and anything heavy in the house, I brought over. All my small appliances, everything went in there. And then at the same time, I brought over my outdoor furniture and things like that, my bike, all of those things. So I could lighten up the house a lot. And so let's keep in mind that there's still the same tires on it, just that one new one. And we did go through a scale on our way to this spot. And the house was weighed and it was not overweight. So those are two things I would recommend. I would recommend pulling anything heavy out of the house and moving it separately. If you're already at close to weight capacity, I would recommend getting the highest PSI tire rated tires for your tiny house if you can. If you've got a big girl like this one, consider at least a triple axle, if not a dually. Even if you go with a double axle, but a dually, that would still give you 4 tires on either side. Just have the discussion with your builder and weigh your house empty so you know how close you are to max. Because when I got the house, I didn't get the weight. It was probably on paperwork somewhere, but it was just not a discussion that I had. So yeah, that's my advice. And having a spare tire, probably not a bad idea. So when I move next, I am, if it's any distance at all, and I suspect it will be because I suspect my next move will be to my own property, which likely won't be on the island just because property is so expensive here. So it'll likely be back on the mainland, maybe northern BC or southern Alberta. Anyways, what I'll be doing is I'll be replacing all 6 tires. I will be replacing them with the 110 PSI tires. And that will give me peace of mind. I will still pull a trailer with the blocking and the skirting and the shed pieces. All of that will still need to be moved separately. I will pull out some of the heavier stuff, like the food and such. I will put that inside the van, and I will replace all 6 tires. Yes, it will be expensive, but everything I own is in this house. And if it blows a tire, that's a big jar to the house. And I don't want anything to damage the structure. If we were to, God forbid, blow out more than 1 tire at a time, that could be devastating. I don't want to deal with that. And so, yeah, just if you have the opportunity to think of it ahead of time, now you know. That was my experience. Have a discussion with your builder. Figure out what the house is going to be weight-wise with all of the materials they're going to use, and add, 3,000-4,000 pounds for your own shit. Because if it went from just under 22,000 pounds to 18,000 or under in the move here, right? Because I took the stuff out, yeah, that's about 4,000 pounds worth of stuff, which blows my mind. There's, some things that I will always do. I will always hire a professional, A&N Transport if I can, to move my tiny house. I will always have a handy person, handyman, handy woman, there to help me get the house ready on the outside, everything ready for the move, and the day of the move, both in the spot that I'm leaving, and then have somebody waiting for me that I'm paying to be there at the new spot for arrival to help get everything settled in and help get the house level and blocked up. Those 2 things will reduce your stress incredibly, will give your move the highest chances for being successful and for you and your tiny house arriving safely. This series of getting your tiny house ready to move is something I've been wanting to make for a long time because I think it would have been very helpful for me before I moved my tiny house for the first time to have had somebody else's experience. I had seen some tiny house moves where they didn't go with a professional, and the person they did hire didn't have a vehicle that could handle it and got it stuck or ended up abandoning it. So I knew I was going to use a professional. But aside from that, I really hadn't seen a whole lot. So I thought this series would be very helpful for somebody else. The weather here has been spectacular. Not smoking hot, but nice and warm, 26, 27 degrees Celsius. Beautiful. The kids have been visiting. They're in Victoria today. We've been spending lots of time at the river and out and about at the beach, just doing stuff. And I'm going to, in next week's video, show a little bit of that. But, you know, I've just been really enjoying spending time with them because it has been so much fun. So I hope you guys are out, are able to be out and enjoying some beautiful weather wherever you are. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. I love you, and I'll see you next time.